Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world. So, morning everyone, and welcome back to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. My name's Julia Felton, and I am going to be your guide and navigator for the next 20 minutes while we delve into some other areas of teamwork. Specifically today, I wanted to touch on an article and an incredible piece of research that comes out every single year, Deloitte's Human Capital Survey. And these are some of the initial results from the 2025 survey. And when I stumbled across them, they so resonated with everything that we've been talking about on the podcast, about how to create a high performance workplace and create that environment where everyone wants to work together collaboratively to achieve results. Because I think we can probably all agree that we are living in a world of constant change. The last few weeks, we have seen the level of stability in the world just fall off a cliff. We have seen the stock markets just crash, and there is a real sense of doom and depression around the world right now because nobody is really sure what is going to be happening. And the rapidity of that change, it's happening on an hourly basis, as partly driven by some of the decisions from Donald Trump and what he decides to do, and it just changes the landscape overnight, as we've seen with his tariffs and the fact that he put them in place and then he withdrew them, at least for the next 90 days, put them on pause. So what does that mean? It means that our team members are feeling quite uncertain right now. They are really struggling with this lack of stability in the workplace. And in the old industrial age, we took a job, we had a job, or the intention was you had a job for life. But nowadays, I think for every single worker, nobody is really sure about what's going to happen, and redundancies are come out of left field with people not even expecting them. All of a sudden, you thought that you had an amazing job, an amazing career, and all of a sudden a decision is being made that massively affects you, and your job is put at risk and your role is being made redundant. And interestingly, I was with a coaching client this week, and we were talking about this very fact. In the last 2 years, this lady has had 6 different bosses, and all of her colleagues have been made redundant. And she was the only one that survived. So she went away on vacation. And when she came back, she was going into work, and she always sits next to her boss in a particular hot desk on the work floor. And as she was going into work and checking her emails after her vacation, she saw that her desk had been changed. And that sent her into massive anxiety, because the first thing she thought was, oh my gosh, no, another boss of mine has left or been made redundant or whatever might have happened. And it created massive anxiety for her because she didn't know what was happening. And of course, she feared the worst. And actually what happened was they had just redesigned the offices while she was away on vacation. She wasn't aware of that. And she was moving to a new desk because her boss had moved to sit in a different area of the organization. But it was just really telling to me as we coached around this subject about how really some pretty small, insignificant changes that we can find out about in the workplace can trigger this anxiety, because a key human need is our need for stability. And yet we're living in a world that is so uncertain and where this stability is sorely lacking. So one of the things that this Deloitte Human Capital Survey was digging into was how can we create stability in organizations at a time when organizations need to move at speed and be really agile. And these are some really interesting statistics that came up, but 2/3 of workers globally are overwhelmed at how quickly work is changing, and 49% are worried that the pace of change will leave them behind. And we've talked a lot about reinvention on this podcast. And in 2016, the average worker experienced maybe 2 big significant organizational transformations in a year, just 2. It's now up to 10. That means pretty much every single month, the organization is going through some mass change, whether that's an organizational restructuring, cultural transformation, a large tech initiative, whatever it is. And so this is why organizations need to be agile and be able to change and adapt. But at the same time, we want to create this stability for our team members. And in fact, the research showed that 75% of workers actually really wanted greater stability in the workplace. And you contrast that with the fact that just 19% of business leaders believe the traditional methods of work are suited to create value for team members and organizations. So in fact, 85% of organizations agree that they need to create a more agile ways of working to adapt to the changes in the workplace. So it's really interesting in that there's this kind of gap between we know we need to change and we know we need to be more agile, but actually taking that action is more difficult. And the research showed that 72% of organizations recognize the importance of how do we do this interesting conundrum of balancing stability with agility, and yet only 39% are doing something meaningful about it. So what does that mean when we're in this kind of conflict of stability versus agility? We do need to provide some anchors for our team members to help keep them grounded during these tumultuous times. And some of these new anchors could involve things like a sense of identity, clearly defined paths of action, and a mental model for the way that work works. When we start thinking about that, what does that really mean? It means that these new anchors are going to form a kind of reimagined organizational structure, something that we've been talking about for a while, where we're going to have much more greater intentionality in the design and the resourcing of work, and a better understanding of how individuals contribute to the success of the business and their kind of zones of genius and where they make a difference in the business. But we also need a lot of stronger networks as well within our organizations to make this happen. So these sources of instability really come down to 3 different areas, and that's instability in the work, instability in the organization, and instability for the worker. And I think in terms of the work, we're seeing this a lot where increasingly what people are being asked to do in the workplace is no longer within a defined job description. An incredible number of people are working outside of their job description. They are now working cross-organizational, across functions within the organization. So the way that we defined work in the old paradigm, which was here's your job description, here's your team, this is where you work, this is what you're doing, is changing very radically in terms of we're expecting people to have very adaptive roles where we're asking them to do things outside of their job description, outside of the teams that they were traditionally thinking that they were working in order to drive business forward. And then we've got instability for the organization. And when we think about this, the old style of an organizational structure was very hierarchical, and everyone understood the lines of command and how things came together. But I think we can all agree that we now work in this very dynamic environment where we have cross-functional teams. The organizational structure is much flatter, and we're working much more as an ecosystem. And therefore, people's stability of, I'm in Joe Bloggs's team and I report to Mr. Smith and I do this and I do that, all of that has been put out of the window. And that can cause, for some workers, a real sense of instability and challenge. And then the instability for the workers comes down to the fact that their job paths and their career paths just aren't clearly defined anymore. And I think probably in the past we have been guilty of stagnating team members because there were only certain ways in which they could move up the hierarchy. But today, with our much more fluid environments, that provides a lot more opportunity for people to have a lot more interesting careers that don't follow the traditional norms. And indeed, our team members are demanding this. Team members demanding a change in approach. And according to the Human Capital Survey, 2 in 3 team members say it's critically important for an organization to customize the design of the work experience for them. And 59% say the organization values job experience and degrees over skills and potential. And I think that's a massive mistake. Because we know that team members are attracted and remain in organizations where they feel valued, where they know they're making a contribution. And decisions about their career progression are based on their potential rather than their jobs or degrees. So when we think about what's really going on in an organization right now, we've got this real tension between creating this stable organization and being very agile. And that is linked to another tension within the organization, which is this predictability versus unleashing people's potential. So for organizations, they really need to figure out how they can move forward. And I just want to share with you a few ideas on new anchors that organizations can put into place, because if we think about the situation from the perspective of work right now, who teams learn from? Well, the source of instability is the high rates of attrition, shorter job tenures, and the expansion of AI. All of these are causing team members to feel quite unstable at work and not sure what the future is going to bring. So in the old paradigm, the anchor, we're working in this team, we're working for this boss, we're expecting to work for this boss for a long time, they'll be in the organization for a long time. And so I just shared one of my clients, 6 new bosses in 2 years, just amazing. So the new anchor that we've got to help our team members resonate with is the fact that there's a great power in cross-functional teams and collective intelligence powered by AI. And we want to create that as an anchor that people can hold on to and think, oh, we've got these cross-functional teams. This is a way that I can feel safe and secure in the environment. How about how teams work from the perspective of the work? So in the old paradigm, we perform specific tasks in the service of a job and create it to fixed outputs. Whereas in the new paradigm, we're taking a set of actions based on the data to support value and outcome creation. And I think this is really important, this whole concept of value creation, because we're really realizing that in business, we need to measure the outputs. And success is based on what is achieved, not what is done. So, what are the outputs that are coming out? And how can we empower our team members to be proactive and take action that creates really positive outcomes that add value to our clients and our stakeholders? And how about where teams work? The old anchor was it was the office or the factory. But nowadays, of course, we all know we've got flexible workplaces and they're defined by the work itself and the organizational's needs. So, we've got some people working remotely 5 days a week. Some people only working 4 days a week. Some people working a hybrid version where they're in the office some days and at home some days. Even in terms of hours of work, whether we're working, maybe some people are working 5 till 1 or something, or somebody's working 3 till 11. We have a much more flexible approach to work, which is great. And I think when our team members understand how we as an organization value this flexible workplace, then that gives them, again, a degree of stability. If you're working at home predominantly 5 days a week, but you feel conflict because your boss wants you in the office 5 days a week, that creates a sense of instability because people are like, am I going to be allowed to do this? What's going to happen? How are things going to change? When we think about new anchors for agility based on the organization, in the old paradigm, team members were in jobs and they were organized by functional teams. But in this new paradigm, the workers and AI are organized into networks of internal and external teams. How work is organized under the old paradigm, it was quite rigid, right? It was within the boxes within the hierarchy. Whereas nowadays we have this much more fluid, dynamic approach to work where people are providing the services that meet the needs of our customers and our other stakeholders. And when we think about where this work is happening, in the old paradigm, it was inside the boundaries of the organization. Whereas nowadays, we're working in an environment where what Deloitte calls the boundaryless organization, where we also need to recognize that we need to access and tap into skills and capabilities, maybe outside of the organization, and bring those in. So what I'm really observing is an increasing proliferation of joint ventures because there's so much going on in the world. There's no way, we've already talked about how one individual can know anything, even a company. And how can companies partner together in order to get collective success? And from the workers' perspective, we know that we need this greater speed and agility within our team members. And under the old paradigm, team members were understood and based on their pre and post hire job experience, for want of a better word. Whereas we're moving now into a paradigm of work where team members are understood, but based on their skills and passion and motivations and potential. And this is something I'm really passionate about because I think for far too long, team members, because of the structure of organizations, have been stuck in boxes. Let's call them a horse box, to excuse the pun. And that's the only area where their expertise are. But we've all got massive areas of expertise outside of the role that we've been doing. So I always believe that it's our role as a leader to unleash that hidden potential in our team members. Sometimes it's the things they don't even know that they had an aptitude for because they've never had the opportunity to try it. But when we do, we realize that somebody's got maybe amazing public speaking skills. I was with a lady over the weekend, and 2 years ago, she was absolutely terrified of speaking and sharing her knowledge and being a trainer and a coach. Fast forward 2 years. Oh my gosh, she's one of the best trainers that I have ever learnt with. I was learning some stuff with her over the weekend. And she's also an amazing public speaker. And Somebody pushed her, saw some potential in her that she didn't know she had. And that has completely changed the trajectory of her life in terms of how her business is running and what she is doing nowadays. So finding people's potential is so important. I think how workers feel connected is a really interesting concept as well, because we've got this challenge of AI and technology that creates this disconnection and loneliness within the workplace. And in the old paradigm, it was our functional team that was our little community and support system and provided our sense of belonging. But nowadays, our sense of belonging comes a lot more from cross-functional teams and skills guilds and platform cooperatives. I know running my own business that the importance of being in groups where we share experiences, we share knowledge, we share resources is so empowering. And that really counteracts the loneliness. But you've got to find a group of like-minded people on the same page as you. And where do workers want to go next? Because the great thing nowadays is there's an array of career paths for people to go along. And in the old days, our career paths were quite linear, move up the organizational pyramid. But the great thing about today, in today's paradigm, is we've got this opportunity for lateral career paths and external opportunities. And that makes work so much more fulfilling for people. They can see a way to go that isn't traditional. And I actually think that's really liberating. If we don't manage to manage this tension between this stability and this agility within organizations, here's what's at stake. It's the worker engagement and innovation. Team members don't want to stay working in places where they don't feel valued, and creativity and innovation is lost when people don't feel that they can speak up. Levels of trust get eroded as team members really want to be part of something, but they value relationship. And it's really important that as leaders, we build trust with our team members. And when we build trust with team members, then we get higher levels of retention within the organization. And when we don't, team members just go and find somewhere else to work. And there's also a real need for us as leaders to start thinking about how do we upskill and reskill all of our team members. Because I think our team members want the opportunity to grow and develop. In my experience, most people do want to grow and develop. They want to thrive. They want to bring their best to work, but sometimes they just need those opportunities. So for organizations, this is the challenge right now. It's not about stability or agility, but how do we combine those together and strengthen both of them so we can elevate the experiences for our team members, our businesses, and our customers. So a really interesting thought here today about this tension that's currently existing within organizations between stability and agility, and how as organizations we navigate that, because it is going to involve a paradigm shift change. And it certainly makes so much sense given what we've seen happening in the workplace and how the current models of leadership aren't fit for purpose in the 21st century, and how certainly our command and control structures no longer work. And we need to find a different way to do things. And one of those is a way to lead that balances the current tensions going on within the workplace. So the tension of stability versus agility is just one of the key things that comes out of the Deloitte survey. And we'll be delving into some of the other ones on other editions of the podcast. But for now, I just invite you to think this week about how are you going to manage those two conflicting situations within your business. How do you provide your team members with stability in an environment that is highly uncertain and where we need rapid agility from people to move and change and pivot and reinvent the business to keep moving forward? when we know that a basic human need is the need for stability? I talk about it as a crazy eight. One side, we want stability, but if we have too much stability, actually, then that's when we want agility. We had too much agility, then we crave stability. So how do we effectively manage both of these? That would be my question for you for this week. So until next week, I'd love to hear your thoughts on managing this dilemma between stability and agility and how you're going to navigate that going forward. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast. Please stay tuned for future episodes and do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating on your favourite platform. Recommendations are essential for attracting new listeners. Please follow us on social media at Julia Felton and at Business Horsepower. And if there are any topics you'd like us to cover on future episodes, please do let me know. Remember, you and your team are always making an impact. What impact will you make today?